Um, you can't hear me, Amanda? Yeah, I will just unmute her. Hi, Amanda. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good.
Sorry for this technical error.
That's the way it is, right?
sorry again. Yeah. Sometimes, things go, anyway. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome again in another webinar that arranged by Continuing Education Unit in the School of Pharmacy, University of Basra. I'm with you. I'm Dr. Karamallah Al Yusuf, and we have a speaker today from the United States of America. She is Professor Amanda. Thank you, Amanda, for being with us today. And to be honest, everybody is so curious. And honestly, I have got very long list of questions, from variety of people. So yeah, these, some of these people from side of academia, student, and even outside of academia. So you are more than welcome, Amanda. Just before starting our webinar, for those who don't know Amanda, Professor Amanda Bryant Friedrich, she's a Dean of Graduate School and the Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences at Wayne State University. Before joining Wayne State, she was a Professor of Medicinal and Biological Chemistry at the University of Toledo and served as a Vice Provost for Graduate Affairs and Dean for College of Graduate Studies. Her early training was organic chemistry at North Carolina Central University and Duke University. Prof. Amanda obtained her doctorate in pharmaceutical chemistry from Germany and followed by postdoctorate training at the University of Basel. That was between 1997 and 1999. And from 2000 and 2007, Amanda held her position of assistant and associate professor at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, in the United States of America, before moving to University of Toledo. She is a fellow of the American Associate for the Advancement of Science, the American Chemistry Society, and the Academic Leadership Fellow for the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy. Amanda, thank you for being with us again. To be honest, I'm very thankful and very grateful. And as I mentioned previously, we have like long list of questions, and I feel kind of people are so curious to know much more about, student supervisor relationship. How could I manage positively this relationship, what I have to do, in terms of duties, rights, all these details. So you are more than welcome, and I think you can unmute yourself at the moment. You can't hear me, Prof. Amanda? You can't hear me? I can't hear you at the moment. Prof. Amanda? Are you still with us? Anyway, I'm just like a little introduction in Arabic for these people attending with us. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واهلا وسهلا بكم اساتذتنا الافاضل طلابنا الاعزاء كل الحاضرين معنا اليوم من القطاعات المختلفة، وحياكم الله في حلقة نقاشية جديدة تنظمها وحدة التعليم المستمر في كلية الصيدلة جامعة البصرة. معنا اليوم بروفيسور أماندا براينت فريدريتش، وهي عميدة كلية الدراسات في جامعة ولاية وين. أساتذتنا الأفاضل، حقيقة نعتذر عن هذا الخطأ التقني. دكتور أماندا الآن خارج الزوم، وراح تنضم إن شاء الله معنا خلال دقائق معدودة. Sorry for this technical errors, and the Professor Amanda is gonna join us in just a few minutes. So again, sorry for this technical error. To be honest, Dr. Amanda makes her a priority to opposition herself to influence policies that negatively impact and limit access to education for the socio-economically disadvantaged around the world. She is an avid supporter for inclusion of diverse groups in the global scientific enterprise, and works toward this objective through her involvement in the Society of STEM Women of Color and the American Chemical Society. She has been recognized for her effort, receiving the 2004 Stiley Regional Award for advancing diversity in the chemical sciences from the Central Region of the American Chemical Society. Prof. Amanda is a scientist committed to the advancement of her discipline and involvement of quality of life for all individuals through science. Her primary research focus is to understand the mechanisms by which cancers and other diseases develop in the human body, and to find ways to prevent these events or a treatment to hinder disease progression. Her research efforts have included the training of over 100 students at the high school, undergraduate and graduate level. Prof. Amanda, I hope you are joining us again. Are you with us? Again, sorry for this technical error. I think Professor Amanda has got kind of technical issue, and I hope she is joining us soon. Sorry. Again, sorry for this like technical issue. Again, as I mentioned previously, we have got like very long list of of questions regarding like our topic today, and these questions, and to be honest, are very critical and very important, and at least I'm so curious to find out the answer of these questions. One question I have got from a colleague in academia, how could I define my relationship with my supervisor? As I mentioned previously, in terms of rights versus duties. Another questions, it has been sent from, I think, from Baghdad, and he says here, good afternoon, and Dr. Karam, how could I be in a very positive, like a relationship and with my supervisor? Again, another question here, how often I have to meet my supervisor, and what is the best way for managing that kind of academic meetings? Another interesting question from undergraduate, or I think it's master student. He asked here if I need to cancel a meeting. So how can I like do it properly, especially that kind of critical meetings, throughout your, or one of these critical meetings in your study? These questions, I think every maybe like student have or
Hello.
has got. Hi Amanda, sorry for that kind of technical issue. Sorry again.
I don't know what happened this time, but we're going to
Yeah.
go from here.
I think there's kind of issue in our like Zoom account, so I don't know what's going on. I'm not kind of expert in that kind of issues, but anyway, hopefully it is working at the moment.
Exactly. So would you like for me to get started?
Yeah, of course.
So I did have a slide presentation to show to everyone, but because it's on a different device, I'm going to do this without slides, which I don't think we really need anyway. So it's a good conversation. So I want to first of all, thank you so much for having me today. Dr. Vetter is one of my favorite persons in the entire world. He was one of the best graduate students I ever had. And to receive an invitation from him to speak to his colleagues in his great country of Iraq and at the University of Basra, it makes me extremely happy. So I'm very happy to be here today. So one of the things that probably led to him thinking it's a good idea to bring me here was the fact that he knows that I am very, very dedicated to students. Students to me are the life work that I've chosen. And I believe that it's very important that I open the doors to my laboratory to be inclusive of all people, no matter where they come from, to be welcoming and to be incredibly supportive, to create a supportive environment that will make them successful in whatever way they define success, if they have the ability and the desire to participate. And I think it's really important that we talk about those two things as well, because the ability without the desire doesn't really get us very far. So we have to think about that. So today what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about the nature of the relationship. So we talk about the student and the supervisor, and there's a very particular kind of relationship that we can think about from far back that dictates how we interact with each other. I'm going to talk about the responsibility of the supervisor, but at the same time, I'm going to talk about the responsibility of the student. I'm also going to talk about the concept of holistic mentoring, and I'm going to talk about when it is we don't agree. What do we do when the supervisor and the student just don't agree? And then at the end, I'm going to talk about why we actually do this. So one of the things I want you to think about, I want you to think about the time when you were a young person yourself, and someone decided to show you how to do something that you didn't know how to do. Let's think about your mom or your dad holding you up so that your grandmother could take your hands and show you how to mold or shape bread, or to show you how to stir in a pot to actually cook something. There are two people there, whoever's holding you and whoever's holding your hands, to show you how to do things well. At some point then they recognize that you don't know how to do anything, that you're coming into that situation not having any idea what it is you're doing. But then as they continue to do that over the years, you start to just go in and work with grandma. And so you work with grandma to shape the bread, to cook the food. And then all of a sudden you look around and you can do it all by yourself. So at the end of the day, that is what the relationship is like between the supervisor and the student. The supervisor is there to support and get the student to the place where they can independently actually be a scientist, a pharmacist, and create knowledge and actually carry out the job that you have them there to do. So one thing I want to remind everyone of too is that responsibility that you have. When you decide that you're going to be a researcher, or you're going to be a pharmacist, or you're going to go out and become a baker, it doesn't matter. You have decided to join a group of people that you identify with. You have the same professional identity. So if you are in a group of pharmacists, then you know that you are around people who understand what it is you do, and they have a certain expectation of your behavior. And you owe it to the person who actually trained you to be a good example, because you are actually carrying on the legacy. You are carrying on what they taught you, and you are carrying on their behavior because they learned from you how to behave as a professional. And another part of your responsibility is to train others, because you do not want your legacy or your knowledge to end with you. You want it to continue, and you want people to also understand that this person understands what it means to be a scientist. They understand what it means to be a pharmacist, and they're going to carry that professional identity with them. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts. What is the supervisor supposed to do? The first and foremost thing that a supervisor should do is transfer knowledge. You are the supervisor because you know how to do things and you know how to do them well. And so you should see the student as a vessel, as a pot that you're pouring into. You're transferring your knowledge. Not only do you transfer knowledge, though, the theory, you transfer your skills. You want your student to be able to observe you doing things and doing things well, so that they can understand how the behavior should be and how you should perform as a professional. You should also inspire. A supervisor has ideas. We have the benefit and the blessings of knowledge. So we should be able to inspire others to try to attain the same level that we have. So inspiration is completely, completely important. And you also need to be a guide. Remember, like I said, when you were little and your mom's holding you up and grandma's holding your hands to show you how to shape the bread, you know nothing. And you don't know how to turn on the stove. So you need, as a supervisor, to understand that students come to you with very little knowledge. And they need to be guided. They need to be told what's right and what's wrong. They need to be shown what's professional, what's unprofessional. They need to be shown what is good behavior. As supervisors, we have to be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to be honest with our students. When we don't know the answer, we say, I don't know. But we go and find the information because that's who we are. We're thirsty for knowledge anyway. And we have to be respectful. We have to be very respectful to each other. And that's an important piece. Now, one thing that's different about me, and Dr. Better can tell anyone this who asks him, that one of the things that's very important for me is that I acknowledge that my students are human beings. I always acknowledge their humanity. And what does that mean? That means that I recognize that some people get up in the morning not feeling well. They may have chronic diseases. They may have a sickness. Things happen to human beings because God gave us not the ability to be constantly doing well. So we remember the humanity. We remember the fact that we are men and women who have families and we have other responsibilities. So we think about the entire person. So that becomes an important piece also. In the next part, human beings want to be successful. So we help our students create the networks that they need, the networks that they need to be successful. We don't just train them, give them knowledge, give them skills, and kick them out and say, go now and be well. We owe it to them to help them to find their place in the profession that they've chosen, that we've chosen to train them in, so that they can be basically our prodigies in the world. Now, the other thing that supervisors have to do, and this is where it gets difficult sometimes, we have to be available. We have to be available. When a student reaches out to you and a week later you haven't responded to them, that doesn't reflect well. And so you want students to recognize that they need to be available to you and you need to be available to them. And I'll talk about a little bit more with the students, but that availability doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We know better than that. So that's an important piece. We also, as supervisors, have to be critical. If we just let a student just go along and think that everything that they're doing is fine, that is not going to be good for the student. We have to tell students when they're doing things incorrectly, but we do it with honesty and respect. And so that becomes an important part, but we cannot ever decide not to be critical. The other thing we have to do is provide the resources. It is our responsibility as the supervisor to make sure that our students have the resources that they need to understand and gain the skills. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have $1 million piece of equipment. It means that we have to have the resources to find ways for them to get the things that they need. And so that means that we also need to know, what resources do my students need to be successful? We have to communicate. When things are not going well, we have to talk about it. And sometimes that can be very difficult, but we still should think that communication is very important. Communication nowadays takes so many different ways. We can go by phone, we can Zoom, we can actually have email conversations, but we have to communicate with each other, and that becomes really important. And if you want your students to be productive and to do well and to follow what you tell them that they're supposed to be doing to do well, you have to acknowledge when they do a good job. We have to make sure that we acknowledge that they're doing the things that they're supposed to do. Because when it comes time to be critical, it's easier for them to hear it when they know that you're also there to tell them when they do things right. Supervisors should always be looking for opportunities for their students. And that's something that I take near and dear to my heart. When I make a connection with another person in my field, that connection becomes the connection to the hundreds of students that I've trained. Because if I know a student who needs that connection, I'm going to reach out to them. And last but not least, one of the most important things that we have to do is ensure a safe, healthy, and productive environment in which our students can learn. That's not always easy. I know a lot of times that there are things that can happen that we have little control over, but we are the ones who have the knowledge. So we have to actually decide to prepare ourselves to think about what kinds of things people may actually run into that may not be healthy or productive for them. So as supervisors, we have a lot of work to do, obviously. And that's from my perspective. I didn't go out and find literature to tell you this. I've been doing this kind of training for 20 some years now. And so this is kind of what I've found over the years that we as supervisors can do to balance the relationships with our students. Now, if we switch now and start talking about what is it that the student is supposed to do? And students have to recognize that when a supervisor decides that they're going to take you under their wing, as we say, and they are going to train you, they are making a commitment to you, but you as the student are making a commitment to them. It's a two-way relationship. So you can't expect that the supervisor is just going to be there to take care of you. The supervisor has also other things that are just as important. So as a student, you need to come prepared to receive and apply knowledge. That is the key. You got to come prepared to receive and apply the knowledge. You want to practice and apply the skills that you need. If your supervisor shows you how to do something one time and you feel like you're supposed to know how to do it now without practice, then you're not actually taking seriously your commitment to your supervisor. So you need to make sure you do that. Now, we told the supervisor to inspire. So we're telling the student now that inspiration should make you be innovative. Go use that energy, go use that knowledge, go use those skills that come from your supervisor to make things bigger, to make things better, to make your supervisor look good. Yes, that is part of the job of a student. Make your supervisor look good because that is part of the job. Students, one of the things that you really have to learn how to do is ask for help. We just told you as supervisors, we know that you come to the table not knowing everything. If you don't know everything, ask somebody, and that's going to be really important. So ask for guidance. The same honesty and respect that your supervisor gives to you, go to your supervisor. And I am quite aware that the culture in Iraq has a specific type of reverence and respect for elders, and that people see that respect. Remember that when we talk about respect in the United States, that's one thing, but respect in Iraq is different. And you need to make sure that you take the concept of your culture into your understanding, and that is how you're going to approach your supervisors. Your supervisors may have trained in other countries, they may have seen other things, but when you're at home, you do things the way you do at home. So make sure that you learn to respect people in that way. Be human. Actually, I ask your supervisors to respect your humanity, but you have to act like a human. You have to tell your supervisor, I am ill. I have a sickness. You have to let them know that there are things that may actually cause problems. And they have to know that, because then they can plan for it. Your supervisor needs to know just what kinds of things that may come into play. And Dr. Better can tell you one thing I always told my students is never embarrass the family. Because my research is my family, my students are always my family. So when we go out and we're showing the Bryant Friedrich Laboratory, we're representing what the university, we're representing ourselves. We never want to show ourselves in a bad light. So we never want to embarrass the family. One thing that I will say that I have recognized with students in the past, and this becomes very important, is students have to learn to respect their supervisor's time and responsibilities. Your supervisors don't just have you to think about, and they have lives as well. They are also human beings. So you need to also think about their humanity. And so you want to look at then, who am I working for? I need to make sure that I understand that their time is limited. I need to make sure that if I ask them for something today, I can't expect it to come back in 2 hours because maybe they're in meetings all day. But try to make sure that you understand those things and respect that time. Students need to be ready to receive criticism with humility. You are working with your supervisor because you believe they know what they're doing. And if that person gives you some criticism, you have to expect that it is for your best. So you accept it with humility. Never waste resources. Never waste resources. Students have a tendency to not always understand the value of the resources that they're using, or how much it costs, or how much you have to go through to get it. Students respect that. Do not waste your resources. It's important because you will not only affect yourself, but you affect others. We ask the supervisor to communicate. It's up to the student to communicate as well. That is also a two-way street. Make sure that you're communicating your needs, and you communicate when you don't understand what the expectations are. Students should always acknowledge the contributions of their peers. We do not work in isolation. We work in teams. And if a colleague comes in and helps you with something, say so, because that's how you build the confidence of the team, and you make everyone feel productive and fulfilled in the environment. When your supervisor brings you opportunities, take advantage of them. It is a lot of work for us as supervisors to make sure that you have the opportunity to learn all of the things that you need to learn. So I think it's really important that you take advantage of those. And last but not least here, work safely. Work safely. I'll say that again. Pay attention to what you're doing. Listen to those around you and be productive. Don't waste your time or your supervisor's time. Be productive and utilize those resources well. So the next piece I want to talk about just shortly here is the holistic mentoring piece. And this is for the supervisor as well as the student. I want you to think about the fact that the people who are your supervising are definitely people with very complex lives. We have found, as the graduate dean here at Wayne State, I have very, very many students who have families. They are living either here with them, or they're living far away. In Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, in Eritrea, all kinds of places, students have families. They sometimes have children and husbands and all kinds of things. So their personal commitments can also have to be taken into consideration when looking at the research that they're doing or the supervision that you have to give them. And sometimes it's very hard for us because, to be honest, when I was trained and my professor knew nothing about what I was doing outside of work. But nowadays, that's an expectation that our students have, that people will actually look to them and see how they can help them. So you want to make sure that that's an important piece of what you're doing. So when you're interacting with your students, if that becomes an issue, you want to ask them questions that they can answer. Ask open-ended questions. How are you today? How is everything going? How is the research going? Not being very specific. And then sometimes they will tell you the things and you can jump in and help them resolve issues. We have to make sure as supervisors that we set very clear expectations for our students. And the students need to make sure that they understand them. So if your research advisor, your supervisor, and whatever task is telling you, this is what I need you to do, and you don't know what it means, then you need to ask. Because at the end of the day, if you don't fulfill your responsibilities, it's on you. And you need to make sure of that. Creating connections for your students is really important if you're the supervisor, to make sure that they know where to go when they need things. Because sometimes there will be other people out there who can help them just as much as you can. You want to make sure that the environment where your people work, they recognize that they're wanted there. If you don't want someone working for you as a supervisor, then you should find a way to actually move that person somewhere else, because it's not fair to you, nor is it fair to the student. And stay focused on why. Both the student and the supervisor should stay focused on why are we here and why are we working together. So the last thing is, what happens when we don't agree? Now, this is a point where my training as a dean of a graduate school has been very helpful for me. Graduate students very often do not get along with their research supervisors. And there are many reasons for that. Some of it's cultural, some of it is a lack of expectations. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I find is always a problem with communication. And sometimes people don't know how to communicate with each other. So you need to bring someone else in to help with the communication. And that will sometimes help people to actually find a way. If they can't come to a resolution, it is up to those who run programs, who are the supervisor of the supervisor, to have a pathway for people to appeal and to say, things are not going well. I need to change this relationship. And one thing I'll just mention, here in the US, we have now student supervisor contracts. So even as an undergraduate student is working under the supervision of a PI, they have a contract that actually outlines those expectations. And so when things don't go well, you actually have a document to go back to. So now that we've gone through all of that stuff that everybody has to do, let's ask a question. Why? Why do we care? Why do we care? Why do we want this to happen? Well, all of us want to be successful. That's the key piece. And if the relationship between the student and the supervisor is a meaningful and supportive one, then there's going to be increased productivity. You're going to see much better research outcomes. You'll see much better work outcomes. You'll see things just happening much better. Innovation is supported by communication. If I can sit down and I can have a conversation with one of my students, they get my ideas, they run with it, they come up with something even bigger and better than I came up with. And that is where we want our students to be. So that's why we think about that. Academically, students learn better when they can communicate with and get along with their supervisors. So that's an important thing. And when you have large teams of people that you're working with and you have a lot of students, they need to get along with each other. And so the supervisor is the one who sets the overall tone of how everybody feels about what's going on. Besides just professional success, we also want to be happy. We want to be able to go to work every day or go wherever we're going every day, feeling like it's a good place to be. And I think that's an important piece. Like I said, I believe in looking at the whole person. And so you want people to actually be happy at the end of the day. So those are my thoughts on the student-supervisor relationship. I can only attribute my knowledge on this topic to having had some of the best students that anyone could ever ask for. I've trained over 100 students in my career in research laboratories. So it's been an incredible opportunity for me. And I appreciate you having me here today. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. To be honest, it's been so interesting talk. Whether you can, unmute, for these people who would like just to answer Dr. Amanda. Dr. Amanda, it is now kind of a bit kind of a critical period, the pandemic and all these kinds of economic and social restrictions. People cannot travel, people cannot. So in graduate school, which kind of support you can offer to help students to just keep doing their own studies?
So do you mean at home in Iraq or broadly globally?
Globally, I mean.
So, one of the issues right now is that in the United States, we've been really trying to find ways to allow students to remain in their countries and begin at least their graduate studies. And then they can come to the United States after we actually have the allowance to travel again, so that they can actually do the laboratory work, here in the United States. We've had some really interesting issues around that from the government that says that we can't pay students, for instance, while they're doing their education abroad and things like that. So it's complicated. The one thing that I would say right now is if you know that you want to study in graduate school outside of your home country, start now to approach universities and talking to them, because universities now are really trying to figure this thing out. They really want to have students from all over the world return to our US laboratories and universities. And I know here at Wayne State, we're really trying to find ways to bring students in, and we're working with each student individually, to be honest, especially those who are trying to go into PhD programs. Master's programs are a little bit different because there are so many more students coming in, but our doctoral students are always fully funded, and so we try to find individual ways to work with students. So I would say the most important thing right now, if you know that you want to go to a specific university to study, reach out to them right now.
Okay, cool.
Dr. Amanda, thank you very much for this interesting lectures. I think we can start taking questions from our attendants.
Okay.
With our first question from Dr. Ayad. You know him very well. You remember Ayad, right?
I do. That's wonderful.
All right.
Hello.
Ayad, the mic is yours.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Amanda.
Hello. It's
Nice
good to hear
to
your
hear you.
voice.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. Dr. Amanda is one of the most amazing professor I ever seen, and I am very proud that she was part of my PhD study. So thank you, Dr. Amanda.
Thank you so much, Ayad.
Dr. Amanda, I just have curious question. Maybe it's close to this webinar subject. So we have many graduate students might are interesting to do part of their research in broad universities like USA universities. So the question is, what's your advice for them to reach out, like other professors or other like institutes, and also what's the best way to, if there is a chance to do collaboration with the US schools? So what's the best way for our schools, the Iraqi universities, to do this collaboration? So what do you think?
Those are great questions, Ayad. First of all, I think that it's really important when you want to do collaborations, it's all about the network. And so you now have so many people who have studied in the United States, and you have connections to the United States. And it's really difficult when I, as the grad dean, I get a lot of inquiries from students and from other people trying to develop connections. And if I don't know who they are, it's really hard for me to make a judgment. But if someone writes an email to me and they put in the subject line, Dr. Ayad told me to talk to you, then I open that and I smile and I start reading, and I'm trying to find a way to make sure that that person gets the relationship that they're looking for collaboration. If they tell me that they have students that they want trained, then I start looking for that. So you really do have to use the networks that you have created throughout your time as students, as professors and everything, because you do have to just use your personal relationships. And that's all I can say. I think that is the best way to do it.
All right, thank you very much. And with our second question from Dr. Muqdad. Dr. Muqdad is our own Vice Dean for Scientific Affairs. Dr. Muqdad, the mic is yours.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Amanda for this wonderful webinar, and many thanks for the organizers. So it's a really good activity at the College of Pharmacy, University of Basra. Actually, I have two questions, very quick questions. It's a great honor for us to having you with us, Dr. Amanda, today. My first question is, as you know, doing a master or doing a PhD is very challenging sometimes. And we sometimes need to motivate students to do their best during their high graduate studies. So what do you think the best way to motivate the students to do their best during their journey through the master or the PhD programs? That's the first one. And the second one is how to shift failure into success. You know, sometimes during the postgraduate studies, we have ups and downs. So sometimes we can shift the downs into ups by certain ways. What do you think? How we can shift the failure into success? And thank you very much for this webinar.
I can tell you're a Vice Dean because you asked those questions that are really hard. Yes, thank you for your question. You know, to motivate students, really at the end of the day, is that thing I said about the why. to keep students focused on why it is they're striving so hard to try to get to where they want to be. And at the end of the day, everybody decides to go into a field for a reason. So if you decided that you wanted to be a pharmaceutical scientist, for instance, like I did, it was because people were getting medications that weren't making them well. That's still what drives me to this day. So remind students very often that yes, this is hard. And yes, it can always, we call it research. Means you repeat it. You have to keep searching for the right conditions, the right things to get it done. Just remind them why. I think that that is actually very key. I have seen my students really going through very difficult times trying to figure out how to get to move forward. And if I can just reach out to them and say to them, you came here with this goal in mind, and I am here to help you get there. And that's the important piece for them there. And turning those failures into successes, I have to be honest, sometimes students are on the wrong path. And I think that sometimes we're afraid to tell them that they're on the wrong path. Let's say we have students who come in and they want to do pharmaceutics, but they're excellent synthetic medicinal chemists. So sometimes we have to look at that and say, well, maybe this isn't exactly what you need to do, but let me nudge this project over here. And maybe you will find it even more exciting. So you really do have to engage and talk to your students and really look at it to what it is they're really interested in. And that will then help them be, in their mind, successful. We have to remember too that success is different for different people. And so sometimes people want to be Nobel laureates. They want to win the Nobel Prize. Well, I never wanted to win a Nobel Prize. I want my students to win Nobel Prizes. So that's why I do the work I do. And so we also have to look at what is it that's really driving people. So I think those are the ways that you can best deal with some of those issues.
Hopefully one of those 100 students will be Nobel laureates in the future. Now with our third question from Dr. Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ali, the mic is yours.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, you can hear.
Thanks for the organization, okay, Dr. Karamallah, and thanks for you, Dr. Amanda, for the amazing presentation. I have one question. It's related to our situation. I have my friend is a PhD student, started his program in Malaysia. Due to the COVID-19 paradigm, he not travel to Malaysia. Okay, so he start first semester and now starts the second semester in Iraq, and he contact with his supervisor online. So I have a question. Is that good to stay 2 years in Iraq and complete the PhD program? He can do all his work related to PhD in Iraq. But he have a question. He say that I will stay 2 years in Iraq, or I should travel to Malaysia after the COVID-19 pandemic ends. Okay?
I understand. Thank you for
Gotcha.
that question. I think it's really important that your friend definitely talk to their PhD supervisor, because one of the things that we know is that there are very important things that graduate students can do without being on site to help them make progress towards their degree. I know here we have lots of different exams and prospectus and things like that, and written documents that have to be done. So if he can stay in Iraq for those 2 years and get some of those things done, when he returns to Malaysia, he will be ready to just do the research and complete the degree. So that's another place where communication is key. Your friend really needs to have that conversation, but no one will look at that negatively. I mean, we all know COVID-19 happened, the pandemic is true. There is a lot of stuff that we can't do ourselves, but your friend shouldn't be worried so much about the timing, but it's actually what they're doing while they're waiting to return to Malaysia.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question from Dr. Munder. Dr. Munder is the head of the pharmaceutical chemistry department. Dr. Munder, if you can hear me, you can unmute. Dr. Munder.
Hello.
Dr. Munder, you can unmute and ask the question? I
Yeah.
don't know if he can hear me, yes or no.
We
Okay,
have
we're gonna
Wafa.
take another question and we'll go back to Dr. Mandarwal. From Dr. Wafa, please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Amanda, for this very nice presentation and very nice topic that we all need to hear. We all know these things, but we need to hear them from time to time. My question is, as supervisors, we are allowed to say no, and we need to know how to say no to sometimes to our students. But you know the struggle already.
Yes.
I mean, especially online. Students think that since we're online, we're supposed to be available at any time.
Yes.
And it's really difficult for me because when I see my students that they are texting me and saying that I need your help now, it's an urgent, and I can't say sorry, no, because I'm in a Eid holiday, for example, now.
Yes.
So I don't want to answer you. But when I see my students are struggling with something, I can't say no. So this is one of the big struggles that I think most of teachers or supervisors really struggle nowadays online teaching.
Yes. I mean, I hear this all the time, and I will tell you, yes, as a supervisor, as a teacher, you are allowed to say no. And you have to actually put it in very human terms. I understand that you are having issues with your coursework, but at the moment I am taking time to prepare for my Eid celebration, or I am spending time with my family. I will be more than happy to help you at this time. So just make sure that you're telling the students when you're available and letting them know that you are a human being. I don't know, I say that a lot, and I think that sometimes we, as professors and supervisors, we want people to think that we are all powerful and we can do everything, but we can't, and we're human. So just say it. Say, you know what, I want to go bake a cake. So
yeah, I mean that's actually true. But since sometimes students or they see their supervisors or their teachers as not only human being, but beyond that, it's like they're heroes. They are their guide. They're the ones who are going to rescue them from this drama that they are living in at the moment.
Yes.
So this is why they just run to you and say, hey, can you help me?
Yeah. But what we're doing there too is we're presenting an unrealistic goal for them. So very often when our students want to be like us and become professors and they think that they have to work that way, we're just making the same cycle happen where someone else is going to be doing the same thing. So we really do have to start taking control of this and saying, what, you are important to me, but I have to take care of myself as well.
That's true. Thank you very much, Dr. Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And just a quick reminder that the registration link for the attendance is available via the chat. And if you don't want to ask your question in English, you can ask in Arabic or even in German, by the way.
That is correct.
Yeah. You can also write your questions via chats. Dr. Kauthar was raising her hand. And if she can hear me, she can unmute herself and ask the question. I think the program kicked her out, unfortunately.
Yeah. Dr. Badr, I have got like a question, and it seems to be kind of from an international student. And
of course, go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you. He says kind of sometime I'm kind of scared, or I'm not feeling into raising questions or my questions or my concerns to my supervisor, because we are like people from different backgrounds, and it is not that easy to communicate with each other. So how can I deal with that kind of issues, especially at the beginning of my PhD study? Sorry.
Oh, that is a very good question. And we see that a lot here, of course, too. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that the student has a responsibility as an international student coming in to understand the culture of research in the institution. And if a supervisor decides to take a student from a different background, from a different country or whatever, they also have a responsibility to learn as much about that student's culture as possible. Then it makes it easier to communicate. So I have, over the years, I've had many students who are from the Middle Eastern countries, and I made it my responsibility to learn as much about the culture and the dynamics as I could so that we could communicate better. And so I would say to the student, make sure that you understand what the expectations are of your supervisor, understand their cultural perspective and understand their professional perspective, and then go to your supervisor in that knowledge. It just makes it so much easier to have a conversation. And I know it's never easy. Sometimes it's easier to send an email and say, is it possible for us to have this conversation? And then you'll get a feel for whether or not your supervisor feels that it's okay. But I think that it's something that you should never say, I'm just not going to try. I'm just going to keep my head down and do this. But you should definitely try to communicate.
Cool. Do we have another question, Badr, here? Badr, you can't hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. I'm just trying to paste the link in the chat room.
Cool, thank you.
I don't
I would
know
like
what's
to
going
say
on with this
too,
one.
you can always, if anyone has any questions after today, please just, Better, I'm putting you on the spot. Give Dr. Better those questions and he can send them to me, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Of course.
So if you have like got a few minutes, Badr, I have got kind of another question from a guy. He seems to be kind of part of academia, and he asked if I need to kind of to build a positive relationship like with my supervisor. So what I need to do, I have usually that kind of questions in my mind. What I have to do just to build that positive relationship, just to make things like go well.
Those things that are the responsibilities of the student are an excellent place to start. The supervisor is always happier with the student when they recognize the level of respect, when they understand the management of resources, how to use the resources well, when they're being productive, and you go to your advisor and you communicate and you let them know, these are the things that I'm doing. These are the things that you told me to do, and basically being innovative. You want to listen to what your supervisor is trying to relay and try to do as much of those things as you possibly can. I mean, it is a kind of an apprentice master kind of relationship. You are learning from someone. That person is pouring all of their energy into you and they want to see something come back. So that's the best way to really build that good relationship, is with honesty, respect, and just making sure that you're doing the things the way you should be.
Cool, thank you. So, Badr, do we have another question?
Yeah.
We have Nada Saleh, I think so, here.
Yes. Dr. Nada, if you hear us, you can unmute and ask the question.
Nada, are you with us?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you very much to Dr. Amanda for her nice presentation and nice lecture. I myself, I get a lot of ideas, and I will do some of them with my students. I am not a supervisor for MA students or PhD students, for undergraduate students, but her ideas are all of great help for all of us. I just want to, I don't have a question actually, but I would just want to ask whether the chat is be able for us to write something on it or not, because the chat is disabled, you know?
Yeah, the chat is disabled, so
Yes.
so you
Yes.
can't answer your
Or
question,
just
Dr.
just
Wafaq.
to remind you that if you want to record our names, so we cannot have the link or something like that.
Cool.
And I say thank you for the second time for Dr. Amanda for her presentation and her nice lecture. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank
Better, you can
Dr.
activate
Amanda.
the chat like at the moment so people can register like in the attendance sheet.
Yeah, I'm working on it right now. It goes to the waiting room. Just a minute.
Cool, thank
Everyone
you.
in the meeting, and I think it goes through now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Yes. The registration link is in the chat now.
Cool, thank you.
You can register for the attendance. And
Yes,
we are
now
more
it
than,
works. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You are welcome.
we're more than happy to try to answer any other questions.
So I have got another question, Badr, here.
Go ahead.
To be honest, not just kind of one question. I just got like dozens of questions. I'm just trying to pick up the most important questions. So sorry, yeah. So there's a guy asked, how could I like raise the level of expectation, especially like when my supervisor has got like his own responsibilities, you know, teaching students, you know. So how can I find like space throughout all that kind of, you know, like environment, like the busy environment of my supervisor?
That is a difficult question because the student is then trying to manage the supervisor, and that can get very difficult. But I think it's also, I'm going to go back to communication again. So if the student has needs, then they need to make sure that they express that to the supervisor so that the supervisor notices that I need to be more available. And there are very human ways and very compassionate ways to do that, but just making sure that the supervisor understands that I need guidance, I need help. And if it doesn't work well, that the supervisor doesn't see that, then it's probably a good idea to bring in like the graduate program director or someone like that so that they can help relay that information. But you have to be respectful. That's very important because your PI does have other responsibilities, so you want to respect their time.
Cool. People again
Just,
ask. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Just, yes, I'm sorry. Just a quick reminder. I think the chat is working fine right now.
Yeah, it is
so
working.
if you have any questions, you can write your questions. The registration link is in the chat room. Also, we have posted the link for our Telegram channel, where you would find the recording for this lecture. Go ahead, Dr. Karmal.
Okay, cool. Again, I have got so many inquiries. You know, people are so curious if they could like know much more about like in the future, another presentation, another talk. You know, about equality and diversity. You know, we need that kind of understanding, especially in a college that have got people from different backgrounds, people from different like communities. All that kind of background. So hopefully we can arrange for that kind of meeting, Dr. Amanda. What do you think?
I would be more than happy to do that. I know Iraq is a very different country than the United States, so I would need to have some conversations with you and with Dr. Better and others to really try to decide what we need to talk about. Yeah. I would be more than happy to do that. I spend a lot of my time thinking about diversity and inclusion, so cool. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I think that's all, Badr. Do you have another question?
Let's ask our attendants if there is any questions, any inquiries.
Okay, cool. Dr. Amanda, if you have like the last few words just before finishing.
Just concluding remarks.
Oh, I am so happy, first of all, to see familiar faces, hear familiar voices. I feel like I have a part of my family that's in Iraq, so I'm hoping that one of these days soon, I'll be able to come over and visit and actually give a talk face to face. I would love to do that when the time allows. But I'm very, very happy to support all of my colleagues, all of the students there. And I am so happy that we actually could make this happen today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Amanda, for being with us again. It has been so amazing, so interesting, and to go on so fruitful talk. For me also, I really would like to be in the US in one day. But I'm not as lucky as you. I have never been in the US, so hopefully we can do it in the future.
Well, this bring back memories. It's nostalgic.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your valued time.
Yes, of course.
We hope that we can meet again in the future.
Hopefully.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And have a nice night.
And
bye-bye.
Thank you for everyone who attended our meeting. And you will find the recording for this lecture in our Telegram channel.
Okay. Thank you so much. And have a nice night.